All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for June 14th, 2021. Call the meeting to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to make a change on the agenda that Council adopts the agenda as amended to allow for the opportunity to undertake a closed session items prior to the timing of the delegations at 5 p.m.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
I was just going to make the motion. I don't have any comment on that.
You can certainly make that amended motion then. All right, motion on the table, amended motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Item number 3, adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of the regular meeting of Council, May 25th, 2021. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship. So the minutes of Council, May 25th, is before you for consideration, please.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm ready to make a motion. I move that Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on May 10th, 2021 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.2, minutes of special meeting of Council, June 3rd, 2021. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, again, His Worship, we have special meetings of Council minutes, June 3rd, before you for consideration.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
Council adopts the minutes of the special meeting of council held on June the 3rd, 2021 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 4, business arising. There are none. Item number 5, bylaws. Item 5.1, proposed emergency management bylaw 19-2021. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I will call upon the Chief to present this one to Council. As you all know, that the DEM position was previously supported by the CEO, and there are some changes that I believe the Chief will walk Council through. Just proceed, sir.
All right, thank you. Chief Munshaw.
Ladies and gentlemen, so what we have before you is our emergency services bylaw, and this bylaw is being updated and actually being presented to both the emergency management committee and adopted. The changes in it were the ones that were wished of council. The DEM position now goes back to the fire chief. The deputy DEM positions now go into 4 other positions identified within the bylaw, all being talked to and supported. This bylaw is being supported and gone through all directors and senior management with comments being changed and made. So it's before you for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, seeing none, someone prepared to make the first required motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council gives first reading to bylaw 19-2021, being the emergency management bylaw for the town of Taber at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The second required motion, Councillor Garner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I move that the council give second reading to bylaw 19-2021, being the emergency management bylaw for the town of Taber at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravas. Okay, fair enough. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The third required motion, Councillor Stravas.
That Council unanimously agrees to proceed with the third and final reading to bylaw 19-2021, being the emergency management bylaw for the town of Taber at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering, you had a question? Okay. Councillor Bruin, you had a question? Okay, the fourth motion, okay. All right, third motion on the, we're still dealing with the third motion, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried now, so thank you. And Councillor Beckering, you were looking to do the fourth? All right, thank you. When you're ready.
I move that council gives third and final reading to 19-2021, being the emergency management bylaw for the town of Taber at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now, so great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. On to item 5.2, proposed dog control bylaw 2-2021 and public consultation results. Mr. Orwa?
Yes, His Worship. Before you is the proposed dog bylaw, and I think this is a bylaw that has already was originally presented to council, and there's some directions were given, and that should include the public participation. And I would call upon the police chief to present all the results and all the changes that we have in this bylaw. So please proceed, especially with the results from the public.
All right, thank you. Chief Abilla.
Your worship, fellow councillors, not fellow councillors and councillors. I'm not a councillor. Due to the policy of the town of Taber with regards to the consultative process that was launched, there was a survey that was completed using SurveyMonkey, which provided. Did I do something wrong? Oh. Okay. That provided some data that we were able to utilize in coming up with some amendments that we made to the bylaw that was before you about a week prior to the consultative process coming out. So they're for you as presented. I'm not sure if you wanted me to actually go through them in detail.
I'm fine with just an overview, but unless anybody else got any specific questions? Councilor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sure. I guess I'd like the chief's comment regarding these, the veracity of the survey. Is it a clean survey? Because you know how these surveys work these days.
I would suggest it is. We used filters in order to make sure that the individuals that participated in it's actually a consultative process, not a survey of general residents. We didn't try to get reliability or validity from all of town of Taber as a whole, because we couldn't do a face-to-face, like a town hall meeting. So the people that actually participated in the survey provided their names, their addresses. We made sure that they were from Taber. If they responded anonymously or did not have a Taber address, we actually, at your request, did not consider them in the survey as a whole. We did get, I thought, some fairly good responses. We had 119 responses, and at least 3 people took the time to actually provide quite a detailed response in a narrative portion, which was analyzed as well in the data. So there were a series of conclusions that were drawn as a result, and then those conclusions, I believe, are reflected in a balanced approach within the amendments that were made to the survey.
All right, so yeah, overall, I mean, I did look at that, and there was obviously just what you got before you there. I strongly agree were the highest picked options. So I mean, I think that speaks to it pretty soundly overall.
If I was to look at some of the overall concepts that were included, in a balanced approach, we understand that there are individuals who are very emotional as they're attached to their dogs, as they should be. I am to mine. But there needs to be a balanced approach between dog owners, non-dog owners, enforcement, and the authorities that are considered within the bylaw itself. Some of the things that we changed from the original submission that was provided to you was that we removed any breed-specific breed-specific wording from the bylaw. That came out loud and clear in the survey results. And from feedback from stakeholders as well as some of the directors with the town. We also introduced lifelong licensing for dogs to remove some of the bureaucracy that happens with yearly dog licensing requirements. And at the end of the day, we believe it actually makes it a little cheaper, less expensive for residents to have dogs within the community. Some things didn't change. Some things remain the same. We also provided some legislation in relation to providing police officers authority in relation to dealing with dogs that are violent and attacking people and or officers, just to protect officers from liability and their actions if found to be, what's the word that's used, slipping my mind right now. As long as they don't act in bad faith or maliciously. That's common language that occurs in most legal definitions or that deal with police actions. And it's consistent with other laws provincially, federally, that apply to police officers' actions. With that said, there has been a few more discussions since the bylaw came to you. And there's one portion where there may be a request for an amendment in relation to what's before you. And it's under section 10, 4.1, 4.2, there's some concern that if we don't have those, if we have those people specifically named, that if they're not present, the dogs may be in care longer than they possibly should be. So we're going to actually request the words "or designate" be added after each of the 10.41 and 10.42. So the Tabor Lost Paws Society present or their designate, or the Tabor Police Service, and I'm going to recommend we say Chief of Police or their designate. Just so in case we run into a situation if there's no Chief of Police or there's no inspector, that the bylaw, we don't infringe the bylaw ourselves by not having the right people in the right place to be able to perform the function. With that said, I guess, how do you put it? There's going to be people that agree and disagree with the document, with the different sections within it. I think I've provided you with a balanced approach that takes in all sides, and I would put it for you today for first reading.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Chief Abella. In the challenges, you listed that the words dangerous and aggressive were used interchangeably. Can you illuminate us on the difference between a dangerous dog and an aggressive dog?
Yes, I can actually. Thank you very much for that question. So dangerous dogs that we deal with them under a piece of provincial legislation called the Dangerous Dogs Act. And there's nothing in the bylaw that would supersede any of our legislative provincial authority to deal with a dog in that fashion. When we're dealing with, and actually an aggressive dog can be deemed dangerous, so we may supersede this bylaw at any time with an application to the provincial court through that Dangerous Dogs Act. But an aggressive dog is more akin to the definition that's found within the bylaw itself. And I think if you go to that section, and we actually amended the section to deal with aggressive dogs. It means any dog, regardless of age, whether on public or private land that has caused harm to a person, or, and this is the word that we used, without provocation, okay, caused harm to a domestic animal while off property of the dog owner, or without provocation has chased a person or other domestic animal, or without provocation threatened or created the reasonable apprehension of a threat to a person or to any other domestic animal, or without provocation damaged or destroyed any public or private property, or represented a continuing threat to or harm to persons or animals. It was important from the discussion that came from this, the survey and discussion with stakeholders that people didn't want to have a dog that's provoked to be labeled aggressive. So, and I agreed with that. Like sometimes dogs will act in a certain way, especially in their own yards, and you know, they have protective instincts. And if they're provoked, that's something that should be considered in the definition of whether or not a dog should be defined as aggressive. It wasn't considered in the previous bylaw in the wording, and I think this is a more balanced approach.
All right, thank you. Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to, at this time, make the amendments to 10.41, the President of the Lost Paws Society or designate, as well as 10.42, the Tabor Police Chief or designate be amended in this document.
All
So it
right,
goes on record.
thank you. I think that's got to cover the two main points, Chief, you were suggesting there, right? Was there anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand there may be other comments, but that's
Okay.
all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Strauss.
Yes, just one other question. Being that all the discourse we had with the first change the bylaw, should we do first and second readings and then perhaps, Your Worship, to the Chief here, perhaps we should wait till the next council meeting to do the third and final, just in case there's any feedback. That might be something that we should take in consideration, just so we don't have to go through and amend it if something does happen to come up.
It doesn't matter to me.
I guess that question was directed to me, was it? As an ask, I mean,
okay.
sure, we could do, I mean, yourself too, but I think that's an option, but I guess I'd just be looking for some more input from council as well. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generally, we see the updated bylaws highlighted. And I'm not seeing what we've changed here actually from before, so I'd like clarification on what we changed.
All right, Mr. Roy?
Probably if maybe that's the direction council would like to take, then we could go through the first reading, and then this will be brought back to council for the final readings to incorporate all the input that have been suggested by council.
All right, thank you. That's a fair statement also, Councillor Bruin, you're right. That is normally the case. I know there was a number of things changed there. Also, I recognized a number of things there. I thought it's very well done, and thank you, Chief, for all your efforts, many efforts to make this survey work, and the many changes made within the bylaw as well. But I'm certainly open to some other council input. Councillor Becker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Strovas. Besides all that, Mr. Mayor, it's inherently not very good governance to pass all readings of a bylaw at the same meeting, unless, of course, it's a very traditional standard procedure. But it could be a bit controversial. So I would agree with Councilor Strovas. I would recommend that we give it first and second reading, though, and not give unanimous reading. If you don't give unanimous reading, it's dead anyway till the next meeting. So that I would prefer to proceed that way, but I agree with Councilor Joe not to pass all four.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
I also agree with Councillor Stravas. When we're dealing with something that's potentially controversial, I think it would be prudent to not give all three readings at this meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, I would be in favor of that, an agreement. So someone prepared to make the first motion then?
Can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
So I have no problem whatsoever. It makes sense to me. How does feedback come in then in relation to the?
I think the feedback mainly would be some more comments via anybody that happens to be watching the live streaming and coming into the Town of Tabor website or Facebook page. And then our Ms. Brenna would be updating us accordingly.
So the old bylaw is actually still on the books, and it's actually, you can find it on the Town of Tabor website if you want to address the changes between that and this one.
All right, okay, perfect, thank you. So, okay, I think we've got the covered with the general direction. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make the first motion. I move the council accepts the dog bylaw public consultation report for information purposes.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And someone prepared to make the first reading. Councillor Garner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council gives first reading to the dog bylaw 2-2021 at this meeting as amended.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. And I think the general consensus is just to leave it at the first reading. Correct? Councillor Stravas?
Your worship, following up on a comment you made about highlighting the differences, I don't know if there's a need to. I think this bylaw has been reworked substantially. It's a totally new bylaw, and I think if we did a little homework and read the old one ourselves, I think we would clearly see the differences. So I don't know if we want to put administration through all that just to highlight the changes. I wouldn't be in favor of that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Broom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we need to see the differences from last bylaw so we can see what's been changed.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that also, Councillor Bruin, that we have seen that in the past for different bylaw changes highlighted in yellow. And yes, it takes some time there, but I think it's definitely clear and concise once that's on paper in the highlighted format. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Can I be
Appreciate
excused
that.
then?
Thank you. That's
Thanks.
you bet. Thank you. All right. On to action items. Item 6.1, Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship. So we have, maybe before I say anything, but I think this is the fourth year in a row that we are winning this award, both the annual report and the finance one. So we have two awards here. They are sitting next to me here, and I wish the team could be here, but they can't be here because of COVID. I might just receive them on their behalf. But I also want to mention that I would just like to express my special gratitude to the whole finance team for their hard work and, of course, as I always say, numbers don't lie, and we are seeing that in these reports. And I think this is a clear testimony that our formula is working in finance. So the next step probably to put another, so that we start competing for the budget one as well. At this point, that's all I can mention, and I have the certificates in here. I will receive them on behalf of the department. I wanted them to be here, but my co-CEO advised me not to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Worker. Just hold those up for us then, and I'll come up and formally present those.
Sorry, Councillors Firth and Beckering, I'm kicking you out again. That's perfect. And if you're right on the corner, Mayor Prokop, and John in front of Councillor Beckering's name, that should be distance enough. Perfect.
And congratulations, once again, Mr. Orwa, and to your financial team. And you're doing the town of Tabor proud once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, on to item 6.2, landfill wheel loader purchase. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there was a recommended motion with that last RFP.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. There was two. Yes, there was. Sorry, you want to go with that motion then?
Sure. I'd be
Perfect,
willing.
thank you.
I just want to extend my congratulations to the entire finance department.
All right,
And make the motion that council accepts the presentation of the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for its annual report for the year ended December 31st, 2019, and the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting Achievement to the Finance Department for information purposes.
thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. And Councillor Bruin is going to step out for this next topic, as he is asked to do so. And again, it's item 6.2, landfill wheel loader purchase. Mr. Shearer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. We were hoping that this wouldn't come to this, but obviously our loader's not doing well. And it's mainly due to not the availability of parts, things like that we're finding, we just can't get them. This unit's been out of operation for 3 months already. Just trying to get parts, trying to get everything fixed. As you can see from the history, it actually has cost a lot of money over the past few years, an extensive amount of money for repairs. So at this time, we'd like to utilize the RMA approach for purchasing a new loader. So we're asking council for the funds to do so. This loader is on its last legs. It's not going to last much longer. We did have it in the 2024 capital budget for replacement. We're hoping to bring it to 2022, but as you can see, it's not going to last that long. So we're asking council for the purchase of a loader. We actually found one that's on a lot that's available that we can purchase. So that's why we're going this route. We feel it's the best way to go. We do receive a savings through the RMA, about 23.2%. So it's a good program. It is in our procurement policy as for us to utilize, but that decision is up to council. So I'd like to wait for your questions or comments.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Chair. I'm familiar with the 621 loaders. I used to own some a long time ago. I am shocked that the repair cost in the last 9 years, $197,000. That's ridiculous. What I'd like to know from you, sir, is there an indication of abuse or poor operating, or was just a dog?
Don't forget that the other loaders are not landfill loaders. So they're not used to the high push of metals, anything like that that could come up. We did blow one engine because of that. It actually came through some metal we had underneath and ripped hoses apart and things like that. That was done, 5 years ago, that replacement? And that was $50,000 at that time. But even with that, there's been an annual repair rate that's been up there, that's for sure.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chavez.
Yes, your worship, I think this is pretty straightforward. I'll proceed with a motion that council awards the RFP for a new wheel loader to Rocky Mountain Equipment in the amount of $269,660, exclusive of GST, with funds to come from capital reserves.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak in support of the motion, but however, what are you gonna do with the old loader, Gary?
We will try to sell that through the capital sales. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. On to item 6.3, PH Adjustment Project Tender Award. Mr. Orwa.
Yeah, Mr. Gary, just proceed.
So this pH balancing tender award is a CO2 injection as per your capital budget. We proposed this last fall. It was passed by council. This is basically a CO2 injection in our water treatment plant. It'll help with the treatment of water, give you better tasting water, get rid of the organics. Aluminum will come out, and it'll save you a few bucks over treatment. So it actually is a good process. It's something we've been looking forward to, and DMT was the lowest tender. We've worked with them in the past. Their biggest project I think they've done with the town was the water truck fill station. It was done in 2014. That was their project. The latest one was that they did the potassium permanganate system at the water treatment plant. So we've used them quite a bit on our day-to-day operation basis. So we are recommending award to DMT Mechanical.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Shear, what was the budgeted?
440,000. We are financed. We do have grant funding for 50%. So you're probably looking at saving about $40,000. So it's good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right. With that, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion at this time. The council awards the pH adjustment project to DMT Mechanical Limited in the amount of $350,280, inclusive of GST, with funds to come from the 2021 capital budget.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.4, 2022 Alberta Japan Twinning Municipality Association Conference. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I would call Ms. Brennan to address this conference part with the council.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brennan.
There we go. Okay. So unfortunately, COVID's placing yet another damper on another event, but this one has a silver lining. So we're asking council to rescind their 2018 motion so we can offer to host the Ajtama conference in 2022. We understand that council's original intent was to hold the conference this year in conjunction with our 40th anniversary of twinning. Sadly, that will not be in our immediate future, but while we can't release the plans yet, we're keeping those under wraps. We hope that what we have planned for next year will more than make up for what we're missing this year. So we're asking council for two separate motions, a rescinding of the first motion, and then a new motion just to make sure that the funds are allocated appropriately.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Chavez.
Your worship, I'll make the first motion that council rescinds resolution 311-2018, which states, moved by Council Stravis that council directs administration to commit up to $5,000 in sponsorship for the Alberta Japan Twinning Municipalities Association Conference and Annual General Meeting in 2021 in conjunction with the Nottowagawa Friendship Society from the council discretionary fund.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second required motion, someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Stravis.
Okay, your worship, that council directs administration to commit up to $5,000 in sponsorship for the Alberta Japan Twin Municipalities Association Conference and Annual General Meeting in 2022.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Brennan. All right, moving on to item 6.5, Municipal Climate Change Action Center Municipal Energy Management Program. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship. So this is one of those grants whereby we applied on a Monday and got the grant on a Tuesday.
Yeah, you gotta love those, eh?
We love those ones. And this is a very sensitive area because it enables municipalities to manage their energy use, becoming more energy efficient. And I think majority of municipalities, especially around us, I know is Raymond, Edson, Coaldale, Cochrane, Brooks, they have gone through this process. So what it is they're trying to encourage municipalities to come up with a municipal energy manager, like an expert, to come and help. And they're going to fund this one 80%. So 20% will come from the municipality. And this program will go for 2 years if it's endorsed by council, where we'll be getting the 80% of the total cost of the remunerations of the manager. Now, on the technical end, I would just call upon Mr. Shea to share with council what exactly this gentleman is going to do, or the lady is going to do for us.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through Mr. Scheer. Since it's becoming extremely popular to hire these energy managers, is there enough of them to go around that they still know what they're talking about?
Apparently, because we got the grant pretty quickly, so I think there's plenty to go around. It's actually a program through the engineering program that sends them out. It's part of their qualifications. Yes, so I don't anticipate any problem because they've supplied us with information saying, look, this is what you need in your job description, and this is what you put out. They've helped through the whole process.
All right, thank you. Just wondered, is there any indication after the 2 years for that to continue, or would that be on each municipality's shoulders to deal with?
I think that's a good time to evaluate. That's a good time to evaluate everything, to say, yes, we're making money, yes, it makes a difference, and have a look at it then, and that's be for council's budget consideration.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. All right, any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move then that council directs administration to hire a municipal energy manager for a term of up to 2 years with 20% of the salary plus benefits to be funded from operating reserves in 2021 and to be included in the 2022 operating budget.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, you had a question. Councillor Bruin.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So we're hiring this position beforehand, or I'm not sure.
Your mic is off. Your mic is off, Councillor Bruin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We're hiring this position, or I'm not clear on this.
Mr. Orwa?
Yes, His Worship. So this is a program that has been set out there, and this is a grant that is going to help us hire that individual. First of all, we wanted to make sure that council is on board, and once council has approved that, then we'll start the process to hire the individual. Now, the individual will join the organization to work for the first year, and we have that option to extend it to the second year, as directed by council through the motion. So from when they come the first year, through the grants, we'll get 80%. And we've done some research out there. Majority of those municipalities that are already on board are giving some of those guys to the tune of close to 90,000. And 80% of that will be funded by this program. So we just expected to fund only 20%. Then in the second year, if we still need that individual, then we can continue having the same grant. But it's strictly for 2 years.
Right, so as I'm understanding, like, basically it's about an $18,000 bill each year for the salary. The other 80% is covered by the grant.
Yeah, it will be covered by the grant.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I'm sorry, you said 8,000 to hire this individual?
If we decide that we pay this individual 80,000, then
80,000.
80,000, then 80% of that 80,000 will be paid by the grant. So it is at what rate the individual joins the organization. And that's why I said earlier that we've done some research through some of these 32 municipalities that have gone through this program. It's ranging between 80 to 90 in terms of the salary that they're paying this. These are experts, they're engineers, and they know exactly what they're doing. So we'll try to get the best. And as soon as we do that, we'll get our 80% funding. So yes,
All right.
to answer your question, the individual will be hired by the organization and will be stationed here in Tiba.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chavez?
Yes, Your Worship, just to speak in favor of the motion, I mean, climate change is on everybody's mind these days, and not proceeding ahead with this motion would be detrimental to our own health and well-being.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising, comments? All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.6, First Time Hunters Program, request to access wastewater irrigation land. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship, again, we have another request here, and I would ask Ms. Van Ham to address this with council, please.
All right, thank you, Ms. Van Ham.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Mr. Hurst is making his request again to utilize the lands north of town for the First Time Hunter program. He has been accessing that site for approximately 25 years and continues to educate the First Time Hunters. I've also reached out to Mr. Beckering, who is leasing those lands, and indicates that Mr. Herbst is continuing to be a good steward of that land and that program in that area. So I am available if there are any additional questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council authorizes access to the town's wastewater irrigation lands legally described as northeast 35 of 10 of 17 west of the 4th meridian, northwest 36 of 10 of 17 west of the 4th meridian, southwest 36 of 10 of 17 west of the 4th meridian, northwest 25 of 10 of 17 west of the 4th meridian, and southwest 25 of 10 of 17 west of the 4th meridian by the First Time Hunters program during the month of November in the years 2022 to 2026 as requested by program leader Alan Herbst.
All right, thank you. That is a loaded motion. Well done. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. All right, on to item 6.7, Chamber of Commerce Cornfest storage needs. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship, I would like to ask Mr. Shear to address this with council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Sorry, this is from our tri-party meeting with the MD of Tabor, Town of Tabor, Chamber of Commerce. This is a request that we'd have some place to store their decorative fencing, and the suggestion from council was to purchase a storage container. So we'll bring that for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Bruin.
Sorry, question, Mr. Mayor, is that big enough? Should we be going to a 40-foot or is?
No, because they already have part of one out there already. They share with recreation. So yes, it is good enough just for this decorative fence need. Apparently it's in a 10 by 10 building now. So an 8 by 20 storage C-can should accommodate it.
Okay, just I own a 80 by 40 and just wondering if that was enough room for them, if we should actually expand now.
That would be up to you, so we'd have to bring it back with updated costs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Mr. Scheer. I'm not opposed to this request, but I'm just wondering if the Chamber of Commerce has been approached to share in the cost of purchasing this C-can.
No, they have not. This was a direction from council at that night, was to bring it forward for your consideration.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion at this time that council directs administration to purchase a C-can storage container for the Chamber of Commerce use and stored at the Public Works Yard at a cost of $4,425 excluding GST, with funds coming from the capital reserves.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.8, feral and stray cat discussion. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship. So this is an area that, of course, was requested by the mayor for discussion with council. And we did some little research there based on the original bylaw and the current bylaw. And probably I would hand over to the mayor to maybe proceed from there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Orwa. Yeah, that's correct. Actually, this came to me by way of complaint in the industrial area of a large feral cat issue out there. It's been out there for quite some time. But I guess the bottom line, what's happened is, if anybody recalls correctly, we did repeal this bylaw. It had administration and our Ms. Van Ham look into this for me and found out some other details. And basically, this is what's before us today, that we did repeal that original bylaw. And I think the bottom line is we weren't happy with the value we were getting out of that initial format. We were paying a fairly large spay and neuter bill for the month, and hence it was recommended and or decided to repeal that particular bylaw, and that's what was done. But we haven't gone further as far as how to deal with the feral cat concern out there. So I guess that was kind of my ask, the citizens' ask that came to me about this and seeing this firsthand. Apparently there is a lady in town, I don't recall her name off the top, that has been looking after some of these stray cats there and trying to rehome and that sort of thing. So she's doing her due diligence, but we don't have anything in place ourselves currently as a town of Taber to be able to deal with this. And I understand that the Lost Paws Society was also approached to possibly build on, and I think it was from the same lady that's looking after the cats as best she can, to do something with the Lost Paws Society facility for future reference and potential to deal with cats in that regard also. Councilor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, I believe when we rescinded this bylaw and all, I believe the statistics showed that most communities around us didn't have such a bylaw in place and wouldn't enforce it anyway, wouldn't go ahead with it anyway. So I think we made that rescindment on good, solid arguments, and I'm just not sure why we should go forward with this any further. We looked at it quite extensively. Other communities don't have it. I can't support this here at this time.
All right, thank you, Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I recall correctly, when we rescinded this bylaw, it was because large portions of it were not being enforced. And why would you have a bylaw on the books that you don't intend to enforce? However, if there is still a problem with feral cats, then perhaps we need to look at some sort of bylaw, perhaps not as extensive as our previous one, but if there's a problem, I would think that we at least should do our due diligence and look into some possible solutions.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we addressed this earlier, previously. Feral cats will come if you feed them. And I think our previous, this is something we don't have to address as council.
All right, thank you. I guess some of the concern, like I said, this resident was extremely concerned about this. And the fact that we did have a spay and neuter program, to me, says we were doing something to try to control that population as best we can. And we've since discontinued that. So that only says one thing: what's going to happen. The population is going to increase, and we're roughly a year and a half later, and that's exactly what's happening. So I don't know. It's I'm just not so sure. I think we need to really look at this and do our due diligence, and maybe the bylaw, Councilor Bruin, you're right, maybe the bylaw needs to be involved with that as far as some suggestions for our bylaw officers, what kind of complaints they're receiving, that sort of thing, and if it's increased or just, how they're handling it. their end, but only stands to reason we were doing that for, I don't know how many years, but I mean, we did a pretty extensive spay and neuter program that was obviously helping in that area, and it's since been discontinued. So that's the concern of our citizenry, that it's exploding out of control there, and can we do something potentially with that for future reference? Councilor Chavez.
Yes, Your Worship, at this time I'd like to proceed with a motion that council takes this information in this package for information purposes only.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, carried. On to item 6.9, standing item council requests. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship, this is an opportunity for council to ask the administration any question they might have. And looking at on the board right there, we only have 3 items so far. And I just leave it for council if there's any outstanding item or any direction or any question that you might have to the administration.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Councilor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, just a point that council might want to consider, and that is, being that we're having a new parking lot being paved right next door to us here, maybe now is a time that that council should declare the community center parking lot an event parking lot only. Now, you think about that. That's if there's an event or if there's something happening, parking would be permitted. But if there was nothing going on, then our bylaw officers would have the right to expel anybody from that parking lot.
All right, thank you, Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a suggestion, but if we want to discuss what Councillor Stravas had mentioned first.
All right,
Move
so
on to
you're looking
something
to put that in the form of a motion, Councilor Stravas?
Well, I was getting some feedback from the rest of council, how they feel about this. No point in making a motion if council isn't going to support it. I think it's a good way to help clean up that, because we've had issues ever since I've been on council about that, and they just keep going and going, and we put up cameras and we do this, that, and the other thing, and it's still a problem. On Sunday, it was golfing and on number 15 green right there. There was a bunch of cars parked there, and there was garbage, strewn out there again on the parking lot when it's under construction. So I'm just thinking this is an ongoing problem, and somehow as a council, we need to address this here.
All right, thank you, Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree 100% with Councillor Stravas, what he's intending to do with this motion. It's unbelievable and disgusting the garbage people leave behind them in the civic center parking lot. If there's any way we can enforce something there to stop them from doing this, I'm 100% in favor.
All right, thank you, Councilor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, there's been problems with people littering like crazy, and it is disgusting, like Councilor Bruin said. However, what you're doing in effect is moving the problem probably somewhere else. Not probably, for sure, somewhere else. So I'm just wondering what the benefit of that would be. It is the people's parking lot, right? The people at town table in the parking lot. I cannot understand why you would have 3 acres of nice paved parking lot that you can't park on, except for events. For example, Mr. Mayor, if I have to go to swimming lessons, is that an event? So can I park there or not? Is that an event for me? And how is bylaw going to enforce that? It boggles my mind. I don't understand that.
Oh, exactly. No, thank you, Councilor Firth.
I would echo what Councillor Beckering said. I don't disagree. There are some issues with garbage and other things in the parking lot over there, but I don't think designating it as event-only parking is the solution. I'm not sure what the solution is, but I'm sure we can think and come up with something a little more creative that would be a better fit.
All right, thank you, Councilor Garner.
Yeah, as I look at that, I echo what my fellow councilors say about the garbage, and it is disgusting. no doubt about it. But I think the root cause is enforcement. People are doing that, and they're doing it deliberately, without consequence. And that's why they keep doing it. And if there were some harsh consequences, then maybe that aspect of the problem would go away.
Yeah, no, good point, I agree. That is important. The police service definitely has lots, and or the bylaw has lots on their plate always. They do patrol the area. I know I've seen them on a fairly regular basis. And you know, when they're parked in groups like that, it's almost impossible to see who's doing what when there are 10, 12 vehicles there. That's some of the difficulty, I think, that enforcement has. Now, I don't know if the cameras are ever checked periodically to see what's going on any given evening or what, but you're right, there needs to be some more consequences as a result there. And I think if there was some individuals that were charged, that certainly would get around, and hopefully that would deter some of the rest of the individuals that are partaking in this on a regular basis. But I know it's difficult to enforce consistently because of what you see for numbers of vehicles over there and how they're parked. Councillor Chavez.
Your worship, you know, when the item of cameras was mentioned, well, the cameras can't get a clear picture of license plates and whatnot to do enforcement. So again, if you're not there, you know, on the site, you know, doing something, you're not going to get any enforcement. And, you know, we can't ask our enforcement delegation in town to be there 24/7 to watch this here. And it was just a suggestion that we need to do something. We've dealt with this for a number of years. When it was first on council, the seniors from Signature Point in that area in Clearview Lodge that were walking down the road here, going shopping at IGA and whatnot, where they were apprehensive of walking past that because of the kids, the vehicles, and stuff that was happening. And I'm just saying that you know that now is the time for council to give administration some direction on what to do. And we're the lawmakers here in town, so let's come up with a solution.
I'm just wondering, Councillor Strauss, we haven't had this at the traffic committee yet either, actually, but I'm just wondering if it shouldn't go back to the chief and or the bylaw department for some suggestions and or recommendations that we could potentially use through administration involvement, something along those lines to start the ball rolling and improve on these problem areas. Councillor Garner.
One of the things that I've heard here today is that if we clamp down on that situation, it'll just go to another area. I think the difference in my mind is when it goes to that different area, whether it be a church parking lot or something else, it's going to be on private property. And those people have the ability to say no trespassing.
All right. Anybody wish to make a motion for some direction for our administration? Councillor Chavez.
Yes, your worship, at least I'll make a motion so that something can be done, that council directs administration to contact the traffic committee to review the parking situation at the community center parking lot.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Any other standing item requests? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the more positive side effects of COVID-19 seems to be the increase in biking, like bicycles. However, I have had some concerns from some local residents about people on bikes following the rules of the road. I think people don't realize that when you're on a bike, you're actually a vehicle and you do need to follow the rules of the road. So I would suggest perhaps that administration could undertake either through the Cornhusk Chronicles or perhaps through our Facebook posts, some education posts about biking and the rules of the road.
All right, thank you. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Certainly. I move that council directs administration to draft some educational social media posts about bicycle rules of the road.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Great, thank you. Counselor Stravas.
Here I go again. Looking at all the stop signs in town, I'm just wondering perhaps that maybe this is something the traffic committee could look at too. If some of those stop signs could be replaced with flashing crosswalk signs like we have out here on 50th Avenue. We've got some locations in town, for instance, on 54th Street North, in a 2-block area, there's 2 stop signs by the school there. I can understand maybe at the corner of 56th and 50th Street there, maybe at the school there, we need one. But maybe 2 blocks on the 54th, maybe we don't. Maybe we can make do with some flashing crosswalk signs in some other places in town. You go up 47th Street and 56th Avenue by the, I think it's the Lutheran Church there. Again, there's 4-way stop signs there too. We're getting inundated by stop signs in this community, and I think maybe if it's to allow kids to cross to, go walk to Dr. Hammond's school and whatnot, perhaps, investment is in crosswalk, flashing crosswalk signs would be more applicable, and this is open for discussion again as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor Strobel. We've got way too many stop signs in this town. I don't know exactly who designates them stop signs to be installed. I know it's a traffic committee involved in the police service, but I know that. But I think the suggestion to take it back to the traffic committee for discussion certainly has a lot of merit. There's too many signs.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be curious about the cost of a stop sign versus the cost of flashing crosswalk signs. I wonder if Mr. Scheer could answer that.
A typical sign with the post and everything, it costs you about, after installation, about $700. For a flashing crosswalk sign, you're probably looking at about $8,000 to $9,000. Those are typically the cost differences.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify, I believe, Mr. Scheer, did we, through the traffic committee, we did suggest the flashing lights, be it in each individual budget, correct?
Yes,
For
and
this
we
year's,
won't be
yeah.
bringing those each year,
Right.
one a year, or council could say bring 2 of them a year.
Right,
And if you keep multiplying year after year, you'll get there eventually.
yes, okay, all right, thank you. So, Councillor Stravas, did you want to do that in the form of a motion, or just ask us to carry on with some of that information at the traffic committee level then?
Well, Your Worship, if Councillor Garner here being on the traffic committee, if he'll take that under advisement and take it to the traffic committee to look at alternatives rather than just keep putting up 4-way stop signs all over town, I'll take his word on it that he'll do it, then I won't make a motion out of it, and then it comes back, if he would do that. And while I'm talking about the traffic committee, I might be overseeing Councillor Bruins here, but I think when we formed the traffic committee, and I know when we put some stop signs in when we first got on council, the stop sign decisions and those signs all came to council. But now it seems like it's going to the traffic committee and it's going ahead without any input from council. So I wonder if perhaps there shouldn't be a review of the mandate of the traffic committee.
All right, Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to bring that point up. It seems like the traffic committee overrules whatever council says, so I think it should be brought to us that, if traffic committee makes a suggestion, that it comes to council and then we vote on it. I don't like the way it's going right now. I think it should come to council before we make a decision.
All right, thank you. Just for clarification, neither Mr. Scheer or Mr. Rowe, I believe that that policy's been in place for some time with, actually the CAO has the control to change anything like that, right? Under policy. And we've adopted the traffic committee for the last several years to enhance that and be included in that role. And the information's come out. There's been the odd occasion where something has come to council specifically, but that's going back several years ago, Councillor Stravas. But for the most part, anything that comes up at the traffic committee level is followed through on and comes to council for review or consideration, I guess, as far as what's done, what has been done. Courtesy, that's what it is. It's courtesy-wise information passed down through the traffic committee on what's happening and the reasons thereof. And those items are in place as per the policy in place, correct, Mr. Chair?
That's correct, Your Worship. But we can't forget the bylaws are written that the CAO has all the power, okay?
Exactly.
So if you wanted to bring that back, we would change some of the bylaws. It is also in the bylaw that council has the right to overrule the CAO. So you could make that motion that you want to see all signed replacements come to council. That is up to you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Sorry. Yes, I would agree with that recommendation, actually, that it comes to council for all reviews. With that, a few committees have come forward to us saying with certain reviews that this is what they recommend, and we as council say no. So I believe the traffic committee should also face council when they make a decision, because we as council get the flack of it when we make a decision, and we have to have reasons to agree or not agree with it. So I'd be in favor of it coming to council.
All right, thank you, Councillor Garner.
I'm totally in agreement with what Councillor Bruin just said. I think there has to be accountability, and this is the level the accountability has to have, is on a council level. Sitting on that traffic committee, I welcome that. So those decisions that are made by a very small group come here and are filtered and, justified before council, I would think.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could somebody tell me who makes up the traffic committee exactly? I know there's a councillor, and who else sits on the traffic committee?
So we have right now Inspector Keller,
Okay.
myself as Director of Engineering and Public Works, 2 members of council, Councillor Gardner, and Your Worship. So there's 4 of us sit on that committee.
Okay, thank you. And so as a follow-up, I would suggest that some of our other boards are volunteer boards, but I mean, the traffic committee, it sounds like everybody on the traffic committee would be an expert in their field, for lack of a better term. I mean, these are all professionals that would have background and knowledge about what they're doing. And there are 2 members of council that sit on it. So to me, that would be enough to have council say.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Chavez.
Just for clarification, I thought his worship was the ex officio on that. And just for clarification, what is the guideline for an ex officio designation there? Because I don't think he's a designate on there. I think he's an ex officio, and I'm quite understanding whether he's a part of that committee or if he's, how that kind of works. So I think probably we need some clarification on that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the mayor is indeed ex officio member of all committees and commissions, as long as he's appointed in his own name. The ex officio member also has the power to vote at that committee level. So whether or not council appoints the mayor to a committee or not is irrelevant, because the mayor does have the right to be an ex officio member.
Right, thank you. That is accurate. Thank you, Councillor Beckering. I guess I have to ask a question here. There's some good discussion here, but just I'll use the chamber as an example. We have Councillor Garner as our council rep on the chamber, but the chamber decides something, and Councillor Garner has some input. He's a voting member there, and we're updated occasionally, and not all the time. It depends on. I guess for the most part, we're looking for Councillor Garner to bring something up that we probably should be apprised of that's relevant or important to us for whatever reason. But bottom line is, if a decision is made there, it's not coming to council for any further sanction or recommendation as far as what they do. You know what I mean? So as Councillor Firth also indicated, we are very well represented on the traffic committee, and courteous wise, but it's reported every single meeting, the quarterly meetings, the next meeting for council. The information is all there. So if there's any questions, that's the time to bring it up. So to me, I think some of this is, somewhat irrelevant, actually. But again, it's welcome for the discussion. Councillor Chavez.
I kind of lost my train of thought here, but some of these committees are at arm's length of the town. You know, the Chamber, Taborn District Housing, the Library Board, the Handy Bus. These are all at arm's length. We fund some of these greatly and some very poorly. So perhaps for clarification to know what's going on, for more detail, perhaps it's time that administration created a template for council and that council fills out and makes a monthly report in writing was actually what happens in these committees, so that we have a better understanding of what. So if there's something that comes up, we can proceed down this road, and we are more clearly defined as what happens in some of these committees.
All right, thank you, Councillor Broom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is committees make recommendations to council, and council can rule with it or overrule it. We recently had a rec board recommendation where it was unanimously decided for a certain decision, because it hasn't been within 6 months, so I won't comment on it, that we approve it. And council went ahead and said no to it. I really feel that any committee that we form or we have part of, 1 or 2 council members on the committee, that it is reported back to council, because council has the final say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you. I would counter that with the fact that it depends on the mandate of a committee. So certain committees, it is their mandate to act in an advisory role, but it's my understanding that the traffic committee's mandate is not to act in an advisory role, but to, I don't know, I don't sit on the traffic committee, but to me, if you have professional members of the organization sitting on a committee, then I think council should trust that they are making the best decisions that they can with the information that they have.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm of 2 minds on this, you know. I think that when you appoint someone to a committee, the traffic committee also included in particular probably, that, you know, they should make decisions based on their knowledge and based on the advice they get from the professionals like Council First says. However, the traffic committee affects all the citizens of town Tabor virtually. So I think for council to have the final authority on signage might be appropriate, because it is a sensitive issue in that way. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce, well, it's a little different again, and Tabor District Housing is a little different again. But the traffic committee or bylaws within the traffic committee are pretty sensitive. So I would agree with Councilor Stovers and Bruin, perhaps, that we can get, the council makes the final decisions based on recommendations by the traffic committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Stravas.
Your worship, do we need that in the form of a motion to proceed with that recommendation, that change for administration to bring that mandate back to us for the next council meeting?
Well, I think you had, you're now having 2 asks then. You're wanting Councillor Garn to bring that to the traffic committee about the flashing light option.
No, that's different. I'm talking about the traffic committee itself and its mandate so that council can review it. That's what I'm asking there.
I guess we need some clarification from administration here. Mr. Roa?
I think if that is the direction that council is leaning towards, then we'll need some kind of motion to direct us on what to do to bring it back for council for consideration. So I'll need a motion, please.
All right. Someone willing to craft some form of motion, Councillor Chavez?
I'm working on it. Perhaps that'll proceed with ahead of the first one, that administration form a template for monthly council reports. That's a motion.
All right. I'm just not sure. You're gonna have to clarify that a little bit for me.
Well, okay, just for backup, once a month, all of administration and all the managers to give us a written report detailed what they're up to and what they're doing in writing, so we can peruse through it and just to see what they're doing. Well, we're scrutinizing what they do, but on the other hand, I think, perhaps we need to be scrutinized ourselves as far as how we're performing in these different committees. And I think it just makes good sense for transparency to the community. Transparency is a big issue, and it would go a long way with written reports to show that we're committed and we are transparent in our decision-making process and the committees that we attend to.
You're talking about a template for committee reports for all of council. So you're talking about some kind of report that we fill out for every committee we sit on for any decision that's made, or whatever is happening within the discussion that particular month?
I'm talking about a report that would highlight some of the points from each committee that we're in, whether it be the police commission or handy bus, as to what's transpiring in that, and that we would make a written report to that effect.
All right, Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Stravas. The transparency is very important. But I would suggest that we already have a mechanism for that in the mayor and council reports, which we do once a month. And then it would be it's up to the discretion of each individual councillor whether they deem it important to share with council or not. But I don't know if we need a formal report or a form to be filled out every month.
All right, thank you, Councillor Broom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it's an amendment or a suggestion to Councillor Strovus that committee reports to all councils before decisions are made for council's decision. So committees such as traffic committees, any committee, the report is made and decision is given to council before we make the final decision. That makes sense. Their decision is not final.
Councillor Stravas?
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Bruin, but how does that affect a handy bus or the chamber or Taborn District Housing when they make decisions based on other factors? We're talking about a committee, a recreation committee, a different committee that we're hands-on in, but some of these other committees, don't follow in that guideline.
All right, thank you, Mr. Owa.
Sorry, His Worship, I just wanted to get back to make sure that we don't miss the two motions. There were two items here, the first one, but the second one that Councillor Strovas is talking about, my understanding, from what I understand, what he's talking about is monthly reports that are normally given by the administration. Normally council members give verbal reports. So I just want confirmation that that's exactly what Councillor Strovas is talking about. Instead of verbal reports, he wants written reports. I think that's the first motion on the table. I just wanted to make sure that that is properly clarified before we go into the next one.
All right, Councillor Stravas? Is that
Yes,
clear?
okay, so then I'll make the motion then I'll pass it to you, that administration form a template for monthly council written reports.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin, you also had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just saying, if the committee makes a written report, does that make it law, or does council have the final say?
Councillor Firth?
I think we're talking about two different things here. I think the first motion that Councillor Stravas made was to have a written report from each councillor to report what they, on their subcommittees that they sit on. And I think that what you're talking about is the second portion of the motion that Councillor Stravas was intending to make, which is how each individual committee interacts with council.
Councillor Stravas? Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, Councilor Bruin?
Sorry, I'll agree with Councillor Firth, just as long as council has the final say.
All right, so the motion, if you just read that motion back again, Councilor Strauss.
That administration form a template for monthly council written reports.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. All right, and you had another motion you wish to deal with, Councilor Chavez.
Well, your worship, this is that the traffic committee, that administration, bring back the traffic committee mandate for council review.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Oh, any other stand item council requests? Okay, with that, our delegations are at 5 PM, so I would just ask for a motion to break until 5 PM to deal with our 2 delegations. Councilor Brecken, pardon me, Mr. Roy?
Sorry, I was just checking if you wanted to go to close meeting to tackle one item, or you want to break until 5.
I think I'm just looking after Councilor Brecken for a break here.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's appropriate about this time anyway. We're like an hour and a half, so. Councilor Brecken?
Mr. Mayor, I move we recess until 5 o'clock for delegation time.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Carried. Yeah. There we go. We're live again now. All right, if we could reconvene the meeting, please. Delegations, item number 7.1, Tabor Arts and Crafts Society. Mr. Urwa.
Yes, His Worship, I think we have the delegation from Tabor Arts and Crafts Society here with us, and I think Ms. Carr will be leading that delegation. So please, Ms. Carr, just share with council what you have.
Thank you. Welcome, ladies. Hello.
Hi. I'd like to thank council for letting the Arts and Crafts Society come and voice our concern about our financial situation and our continuing existence. I'm Nancy Kerr. I've been a member for about 6 or 8 years, and this is Margaret Radcliffe. She's been a member for about 25. In the past 6 years, we've become very concerned about being able to continue. And we've been doing a lot of different fundraisings, from doing called the cash vault books, art sales, bake sales, but it, of course, just isn't enough to pay our bills. Thank goodness, a few years ago, Scotiabank came to our rescue by matching our donation, our membership drive and bake sale, which was held at the bank. And without them, we would have had to close the doors. This spring, they were unable to help us because of COVID. So that has put us in a little bit of a situation. So we've come here today to ask you if you could cover some of our expenses for the year, and also, if possible, that you could cover our utilities like it's been done for the food bank. And that's our presentation.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising for our delegation? Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, ladies. I'm concerned, I guess, regarding the comment that you have a declining membership. Is that correct? Could you give me some numbers from your high to just pre-COVID? I know COVID just...
Well, I know when Margaret was a first member years ago, there was probably like 30 or so members. Yeah. And now, this year we've gotten a little more, but I think it's been like 20. Would you say? It's about 20 members? 18 or 20.
Thank you very much.
But it's not enough to keep our membership going.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, as a follow-up question then, you charge a membership fee, I'm assuming. So
Yes.
what is your fee, please?
We have just raised it to, it's $125 for basic membership, and then if you want to be, also do pottery, it's another $40.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? All right, seeing none, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion that we bequeath to the Tabor's Arts and Crafts Society $3,000 to come out of our council discretionary fund, so that they can consider on, or continue on with the good deeds they're doing. Not part of the motion, but I'm very happy. Tours have been through that. I'm very impressed.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Your worship, I support what's happening here, and I'd like to see them continue. Although I'm not sure if we're going down the right road to pay their utilities. You got to remember, in a meeting not too long ago, we just turned down supporting the gym, for the kids, Tabor Gymnastics Club, and that's for the kids, that haven't been, they haven't been in operation for, well, I think they operated 4 months out of the last 14. So, perhaps there should be another way than just covering. Maybe they need some long-term help rather than just some interim help. I'm not quite sure. I support and I like to see them go ahead, but I'm not too sure if handing them $3,000 is going to be the answer. It's probably a short-term answer, but then again, if we wouldn't give it to kids in the community for the Tabor Gymnastics, are we selective in who we give, help to in the community for these different nonprofits?
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councillor Stravis's point, although that is the request from our delegation here today, is covering, I wouldn't be opposed to supporting this organization in the future either, but if this is what they're requesting at this time, then I think this has been an extraordinary year for this organization. They haven't been able to fundraise or hold classes. And if this is what they're requesting and this is what we can do to keep their doors open, then I am in favor of it. We have supported other organizations, for example, the golf course. And in our strategic plan, we identified a gap in arts in our community. And so I think this is a very simple way to support an organization that promotes arts in our community.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Garner?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask a question before that. Have you applied to the province for any grants or anything like that? I'm sure you have nonprofit status with the province.
We have in the past.
Okay.
One of our biggest problems is because we have so few members and our executive is 3.
Okay.
Because everybody is so stretched out that
Right.
nobody really wants. So to having someone who's willing and knowledgeable about looking into grants has been our Achilles heel, but we have hooked up with the town, is it Megan? Erica, who does, looks into grants, and she was going to assist us in the future in looking into some
Right,
grants that would
good,
cover
yeah.
us.
Good. That answers my question.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown?
I stand by my motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Once again, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Great. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
On to item 7.2, delegation Tabor Cited for Christian Education. Mr. Irwa.
Yes, I think we have a team here from Tabor Society of Christian Education. I'm not very sure who will be taking the lead on this. Thank you very much. Just getting you started here. Yes, proceed.
All right, good afternoon and welcome.
May I take this off?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Council, for allowing us to present. My name is Klaus Hoekstra, and on behalf of the Society for Tabor Christian Education, we would like to present to you a request for debenture. I'm not going to speak about the financials. I'm just going to get you excited about our mission and our vision for our new building. And I'm glad to see that everyone's voting in favor of things today, so I'll move on after that. First of all, I have Jared Bell with us here. He's going to talk a little bit about the finances, and Peter Vanderwyken, our board chair for our society. In 2009, a little historical, we became an alternative Christian school, and that was great for us because it allowed us to offer a school of choice, another school of choice within the town of Tabor. We hoped for an increase in enrollment, and that came, but something else came that we were not anticipating, and that was the community that was being built, a community that would grow strong and would actually extend outside of our school community and outside of our families as well. I moved my family from Ontario. We were in Hamilton, 600,000 people, and one thing that lacked was opportunity for kids. And when we moved to Tabor, we were greatly surprised by the opportunities that were allowed to our family. We had a strong desire for our kids to have something to do and a place to belong, and Tabor offered that. Tabor offered that in the form of trails, swimming, farmers market, arts, sports, and the list goes on and on. Prior to COVID, the rentals at Tabor Christian School were 42% outside of our community, and of that 42%, 38% of those rentals had zero connection with our society or our school. And as COVID allows us to open up, we look forward to helping to build that community more and more. I think it's a symbiotic relationship between the council or the town and our school community that we are able to offer another place for people to use use our gym, our building, and to gather. Our TCHS building will allow for us to have another place for community members to gather through rentals, through sports and recreation, and also for family gatherings. I'm going to pass on now to Jared Bell. He's going to share a little bit about the financials. I'm not sure if you have questions for me now or if we can, at the end, wait for that.
We can certainly take care of some questions now. If anybody has any questions for Mr. Hoekstra, absolutely. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you clarify whether you are a private school or a charter school?
We are neither. We're an alternative Christian program.
Okay.
So Tabor, there's two distinctions. We have our Society for Christian Education, which has no students.
Right.
It runs the building, the facilities, it manages the property, and then there's Tabor Christian School and Tabor Christian High School, which are part of the Alternative Christian School Program,
Okay.
or Alternative School Program, and we are part of Horizon, the Horizon School Division. Does that answer that?
It does. So do you charge tuition to attend your school?
Nope, we charge program fees.
Okay.
And those are for society members.
Okay.
So in order to be part of the membership,
Right.
we charge program fees.
Okay. Thank you.
For sure.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? All right, thank you. And Mr. Bell has some information to add. Step forward, please.
So unlike Mr. Hoekstra there, I am going to club you with some numbers. So bear with me. And at any point in time in this, if you have a specific question about the point that we're at here, please don't hesitate. Stop me in the middle of it. So this project started with my involvement back in about 2019. This is when I was first approached to help kind of formulate a projection that would say, okay, if this is something that the society wanted to explore further, what would the numbers look like? So we basically started out to project out 2020 financial results, including a balance sheet, cash flow, and an income statement. What that was done to do was to say, okay, well, at the point in time we were looking to actually build the building, what would the financial strength of society be at that point in time? So when we went through, and you'll notice on 2019, this first document here is our income statement. We had projected out by the end of it having excess revenues over expenditures of about $271,000. That was supported by the audited financial statements of 2019 showing an excess revenue of expenditures of $270,065. So we're pretty consistent from a revenue and expense standpoint. And that was really important for us to get a good benchmark moving forward so that we could say, okay, well, what is the real strength of the organization? We then decided that in roughly June of 2020 that we would purchase some land. I believe that was purchased from the town. Klaus could correct me there if I'm wrong. And that was in the amount of $500,000. And that was funded directly out of cash flow. So you'll see that number there. Now, there was also an effort to do some fundraising to help support this endeavor. We were anticipating projecting out about $500,000 of donation revenue. And currently the society has about $1.1 million that they've already raised within the community. So pretty strong on that side of things. And really the important thing and the big question that we were trying to answer was, once we've built the building and we bought the land, what would our cash flow look like? So this is really the important piece of the puzzle here, is that we projected a building purchase of roughly $5.5 million. That includes the land and the building. Then we said, well, if we got a loan for $4.5 million, interest of about 3.75% is what we based the projection on. We were looking at annual principal payments of $112,000. And we're also looking at interest payments on that of about $115,000. Then what we did is we did this same projection, we carried it forward all the way to 2025. Now again, this projection does only include $500,000 of donation revenue. And at that point in time, the organization would still be cash positive and would have annual cash flows of roughly $122,000. And that's factoring in all of the increase in the expenses we would incur from carrying out the secondary building, as well as offering the next set of curriculum from a high school perspective. So taking that all into account, we're still able to fund the debt entirely, with still having a decent sized reserve that would be able to carry forward and help us make principal payments against the debenture. So quite a bit of number crunching did go into it. I know that I've thrown a ton of information at you there, so I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bell,
Yes.
it's unfortunate that weren't provided with these numbers before our council meeting, because I have a really tough time. I can't read that, first of all.
Yeah, fair.
Dissecting it and mulling it in my head, whether it makes any sense. The land purchase, for example, you mentioned $500,000 for 10 acres of land. That's not correct, is it?
What'd you end up purchasing?
200.
Perfect. Well, we got a deal. Yeah. Yes, and this was created in 2019 when that was the price that we were provided.
All right, fair enough. So yeah, I guess some of those numbers can be tough to
For sure.
digest entirely as far as that long-term format, et cetera. But I guess I'm with Councillor Becker, same thing, trying to decipher all of this together all at once.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to provide this back to
Yeah,
council at any
for
point in
sure.
time.
No, appreciate that. But with the figures, no, I'm understanding, was it not said, Mr. Hoekstra, that you were looking for $1 million that you could raise before you were looking to start your project? Was that the kind of the guideline, like a year or so ago when this came up originally?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
We told our community we were looking to raise $1 million prior to starting, and
Right.
We've reached that point.
Right, that's what I understand. I was just gonna clarify. So that has been, that figure has been reached currently, that $1 million figure. That's great. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not philosophically opposed to this presentation at all, or the request being made. I have a concern. I'd like to have Mr. Orva's input on that. I am concerned that the town of Taber has a debt limit under the Municipal Government Act that we cannot exceed a certain debt limit, and I know the number. We also have a criteria in there that at a certain point in time, when our debt limit reaches a certain point, before we spend any more money, we have to get ministerial approval. Is that correct, Mr. Orva? Can you give us the numbers, please?
Yes. So what happens is we look at the debt limit is calculated. It's about 1.5 times the total revenue of the town. So if you look at our financial statements at the end of the year, we are sitting with an amount X. But that amount X is not the important number that we look at. What we look at is the debt servicing, when you're servicing the debt. And again, when you're servicing, they calculate it as 25% of the revenue. So if you've accumulated enough debt beyond that level required by municipal affairs, then you have to apply for municipal affairs to extend. So that is the main important number that we need to look at.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Stravas?
Your worship, when we do debentures, we don't usually go to 30 years. So projecting forward, we're somewhat handicapping future endeavors of the town for possibly a 30-year period, and I know you've indicated in here that you could make prepayments, but when you go through Alberta Capital Finance, you have certain payments you got to make at certain times. You can't prepay. So I'm concerned about how far this goes into the future, and how the town would handicap the town in future endeavors as we expand and add more areas and whatnot. And traditionally, the town has not got into financing schools of any kind. I'm just kind of curious, the question is, maybe it's not for you, maybe it's for Mr. Hoekstra, is the involvement of Horizon and whether they're able to do any of this through the Horizon division to help you out.
I could try to help answer that. We receive zero government funding for our building, for building our property. So the new Taber Christian High School will receive zero government funding. That includes Horizon. They don't put anything in their budget line for new buildings that are alternative programs. And we do apply for grant and lease money from the government, but that's not through, that doesn't come through Horizon's budget. That comes directly from the government. And we've been successful in receiving some grant lease money in the past. Does that answer that question? Does that help you?
Somewhat, but so if this is kind of the way it is, so other schools, like Emmanuel Christian School and, you know, other Christian schools, and there's Calvin Christian and different ones around, how do they fund them? How are they funded then? Do you know any of that history in any of those schools?
Yeah, definitely. So if you are a private school, you'll receive some funding per student. Horizon leases our building. We own our property. They lease it from us in order for us to host their students. So we do receive money based upon students. And because we are an alternative Christian program, all our staff are Horizon employees. Within a private system, they would receive funding per student and only a portion that all public schools and Catholic schools would receive. And they receive no funding for staffing.
Sorry, I guess maybe I didn't word my question properly. I meant for construction for the building of the building.
As far as I'm aware, there is no public funds that come for building buildings that will be owned by separate societies. If schools are being built by the government, Alberta Infrastructure, then the finances would come from the government. However, since we will own our building and the property, we receive no funding for that purpose. Did I get it that time?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, Mr. Hoekstra, so there's nothing provincially or federally available because it's in the educational system at all for that purpose there, because you're that type of school program? Is that the difference?
Because it's basically a private building and private property.
Okay.
It doesn't belong to Alberta Infrastructure.
But it's still a school and you're following the criteria. It's you know, I'm not quite understanding why you wouldn't qualify for some of those things. Because it's still a school, right? Educational facility.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm just not, I'm not up on all the government programs, et cetera, but that just doesn't seems to be a gap there, if that's the case to me.
So the government, I'm assuming, looks at it like this. We have buildings, we build our own buildings, parents can send kids there. If they choose to send it to, for example, Tabor Christian School, fine, fair enough, we'll cover the funding for the students, but
I see.
you're owning your own building, you're responsible for it.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed Mr. Van Overbeken's here, the board chair of the society. I'd like to have make a few comments, please, and then I have a question for Mr. Van Overbeken after that. Thank you.
Sure, all right.
Okay, so yeah, I'm the board chair of the Tabor Christian Society for Christian Education. This, as like Klaus Hoekstra had said, that this has been many years in the planning. We've had many discussions with Horizon. One of the real reasons why we are so excited and why they are also excited is we have a strong community that is up and coming in beginning to believe in high school education for their children, moving into the post-secondary. With our school and with the way we teach and the curriculum that we provide them, they feel very comfortable in our society, and they are more than excited to send their kids onward, whereas before we would see them, you know, hit grade 9 and then it's the hard farming community, it's, you know, get into the trades, get into, you know, out in the workforce and not as enough schooling to get you as far as you need in these days. So working with Horizon, they are excited because as a private, alternative program, we come from a private background. So we know the struggles of, you know, paying our own teachers, of providing our own buildings and, you know, paying for the curriculum for our schools, and now we have that benefit of joining Horizon. So they see that where we come from a very frugal standpoint. We know every penny is hard earned. We know, you know, our community is not overly wealthy. You know, they support their kids that they're coming. They're dedicated to it, and they like to see that their money is going to these programs that are benefiting the kids, that are, you know, bringing more kids from outside of town into town.
I know we don't have a huge heavy into sports, you know, our teachers and all that. We love the atmosphere of the sports, and we'd love to bring that forward with this new building too, you know, have those. It's not going to be your plain Jane building like we're very frugal the way we do it, but you know, it's going to be a state-of-the-art building that's going to bring a lot of, you know, growth to our community. There's families that are excited to come to send their kids. And that's just what I would like to present to town, and also to thank the council for the opportunity to come forward and to ask for this. I know it's a big ask. Once we heard that it was an opportunity, we became very excited, because it just shows that it's one more way that we can, coming from a private standpoint, include ourselves in the community, whereas before, you know, we may appear a bit standoffish, but we want to, you know, fully encompass the community, invite people in, you know, have those family gatherings, have that building used for public events, for bring in basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, you know, bring big cities this way, as opposed to us always going to the big cities. I think it would be a very exciting opportunity. And yeah, that's where we come from. So I appreciate being able to come forward today, and thank you for your time.
Oh, great, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you guys for the presentation. I love the concept of the school. I think it'd be a great addition to the town. But my problem is selling this to the people at Tabor. There is no tax return from this property. There's nothing. So that's a point I'd like to make. And, but good luck, you guys.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Van Wyken, thank you. I've been involved in other situations where there was possibilities of getting some debentures or some funding. Have you explored in your hard work so far some alternative funding, for example, the chartered banks, or what's very common these days is promissory notes from certain well-heeled individuals that would get a return of 3.5% or 3.25% for the duration of the loan? Have you explored that avenue at all? Because I know there's an availability there.
Yeah. As regards to the banks, we have been in contact with the banks, and just based on our assets currently on hand, there is that option to go with the bank. It's set up. We're getting it set up to the point where we can basically have a line of credit, as it were, to help the build go along, and then we would dip into this with the final bill. So we have been approached and have approached, like you say, the older community that is able to help us out over a long period of time, and there does appear to be some willingness to help, and we have not gone specifically like this debenture way with certain individuals, but I think it would definitely be an option to pursue for sure, and I think there would be quite a bit of support if we would present it that way as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Councillor Strauss?
Yes, Your Worship, to our delegation here. I'm quite familiar with of course, the Christian schools and their philosophy. I believe in it, and I know lots of kids that from this area that hopped on a bus and rode to Lethbridge, you know, take that hour drive every morning, spring, winter, summer, you know, all through the year. You mentioned, and of course, you have a unique population that you've brought into your fold over there, and that obviously presents some unique challenges, but, you know, I mean, we've seen the expansion of Tabor Christian School there, you know, a whole new wing put it on the last few years because you were busting at the seams. So you've obviously got something good happening over there. And so you mentioned about some of the kids, you know, going off and working and whatnot. So do you have statistics how many children don't follow through with their education to high school education right now that I won't use the word drop out, that don't continue, like they don't go to Emmanuel Christian, they don't go to the Catholic school, they don't go to Myers, if they join the workforce and whatnot. I mean, what percentage of kids or do you have that statistics? How many of those kids are lost?
Mr. Hoekstra could address that.
Thank you.
So in our, every May, the government sends us statistics on that, and they actually count it as dropout rates. And in 2011, we were at 11%, and 2 years ago, we were at 0%. Last year, we hit 2% dropout rate for our school. So we've made some progress.
So this would be part of the Low German Mennonite community that that would be dropping out. So that statistic is not huge then if you're only at 2% or so dropout rate after that. So they are carrying on. And from grade 9, how many students would that reflect? To what percentage would be in grade 9 or grade 8, whatever it is that carry on?
Last year, our grade 9 class was 27 kids, and next year is 30, the year following 38, year following 45, the year following 42. So some large classes that we hope to encourage to get into high school.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising?
Am I allowed to address Councillor Bruin's comment about the tax or the?
Sure, absolutely.
So I believe in the package it indicated since 2009 we've had, I believe it's 14, maybe even up to 17 families that have moved into Tabor because of Tabor Christian School. They've indicated that. I spoke to a family yesterday on the phone. They're moving from north of Edmonton, looking to gather closer to family, and they're either choosing a local town or Tabor, and because of Tabor Christian, they're choosing to find housing in Tabor. So I believe that has some financial implication in the positive for the town.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
All
much
right,
for that.
perfect. Yes, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a comment regarding that. Mr. Hoekstra made a good point. There is some portion out there of the population that wants to live in a place where there's Christian education available. That's just the fact, and it's true. And it is a financial benefit to the town because they become taxpayers, of course. But I, Mr. Mayor, would like to ask the society, and in particular Mr. Van Wycken, to research a little bit more regarding alternate funding by way of either the banking system or promissory notes within their own society, which that's a very common thing, and report back to council if it's not successful. That's my suggestion on that, my comment on that. I'm not opposed to their presentation. I mean, how can you be opposed to it? But I think we're putting the citizens of town Tabor in some jeopardy regarding our debt limit, because it's not $100,000, it's $4.5 million, you know?
All right, Mr. Hoekstra.
I would like to just make sure that we don't get lost on that this is just about Christian education. This building's going to come up, it's going to be built, and we're excited about it. Our focus here presenting to you is that we have this opportunity to add to building that community of Tabor, not just the focus of Christian education, not saying that our building is only going to be used by our society members. We've got, there's several houses or lots being put up just across from where the high school is being placed, and having the facilities close by would be a great opportunity for the people of Tabor, not just the people within our society.
All right, thank you. Any other questions whatsoever? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for your presentation. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the debenture proposal information provided by the Tabor Society for Christian Education for information purposes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Strauss?
Yes, your worship, I kind of followed Councillor Beckering's thought process here that there should be some sort of follow-up and whatnot. And if we make this motion without any clear direction, then we kind of defeat the whole purpose here. So I'm not quite sure how we could put a friendly amendment on there, not just rather than for information for some follow-up down the road, including Councillor Beckering's suggestion. Do you have any idea on that, Councillor Beckering, how you could formulate that?
Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do. Thank you. I would ask a friendly amendment to Councillor Firth, but it changes the body of the motion considerably, mind you, but I'm going to ask it anyway, that we take up information at the present time and that the society would make a presentation to council in about 3 months regarding successful or unsuccessful financing of their project.
All right, Councillor Firth?
I would accept that friendly amendment.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin? Okay, thank you. All right. And the society and or the Christian school not opposed to that suggestion?
So just, I didn't pay attention much in school, and that might have been the same scenario here. Can you offer some clarity on exactly what that means?
Sure. Councillor Becker, you bet.
Why do I get to say this? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What it means, Mr. Hoekstra, that from the perspective of council, if council would support this motion, and we haven't voted yet, so I don't know, but if council would support this particular motion, it would ask your society to be a little more diligent to get some financing alternatively from us. However, if you're not successful, come back in 3 months and we'll look at it again. But I'm throwing you a bone here, sir.
Just basically looking for some updated information related to some other financial sources, I think. Counselor Becker, is that what you're?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Brune?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have a rereading of the motion, please?
Friendly amended motion.
Jasmine
Mr.
Van
Rowe.
did you want the motion read again before you vote?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Ms. Van can you read the motion back to us, please?
Yes, Mr. Orwa through to council. Councillor Firth made the motion that council accepts the debenture proposal information provided by the Tabor Society for Christian Education for information purposes. Councillor Beckering asked for a friendly amendment, which was accepted, that the society makes a presentation to council in 3 months regarding the successful or unsuccessful financing of their project.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoekstra, you had
Am
another
I-
question?
Am I allowed to speak?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you got a question, then just
Well,
declare
it's,
it, sure.
we do have financing options lined up already that are successful,
Okay,
that we're prepared to use. However, this would be our ideal situation.
all right, fair enough. Okay, we do have a friendly amendment motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. All right, on to media inquiries. Mr. Roa?
No media inquiries today.
All right, thank you. With that, ask for a motion to move into closed session, please. Councillor Brune? Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried now. Thank you.